Okay, now that we've covered the different parts of the tire as far as the tread area versus the sidewall, where our bead is located, we need to go through different types of tires and the different sizes of tires. What do those tire size numbers correspond with? So I have a variety of tires up here in front of you, so we're going to go through a couple different types, and you're going to see that the type of tire and the size of tire is usually directly related to the application that it's being used for. So heavy duty vehicles like trucks, things that are going to maybe possibly tow weight are going to have a tire that's specifically geared that way. Vehicles that are more geared towards performance, we're going to see that we have tire types that favor high performance and handling, so they're going to use a type of tire that goes in that route. Okay, well, let's start off with tire sizes. What do our different numbers correspond with as far as the structural parts of the tire? We can see on this tire, this is a standard passenger car tire, and it is a 205/60 R15. 91H is also part of our tire size designation as well. But all of those numbers are going to correspond to a certain section or part of the tire and the size of that. Our first number, 205, is going to be our tread width. So this section of the tire from here to here is 205 millimeters across. So that is how wide our tire is. That is also always the biggest number. So 205 corresponds with tread width. The next number in our tire size, 60, is actually a percentage, and that corresponds with our aspect ratio. Aspect ratio is a fancy term for the height of our sidewall. So how high or the size of our sidewall is our aspect ratio. And what that 60% means is that our sidewall height, or the profile of the tire, because that's another term we use for the height of the sidewall, the profile of this tire is 60% of the tread width. That is our aspect ratio. So this section of the tire here, our sidewall, our next number is a 15, which follows the R designation, and that R stands for radial, because this is a radial type tire, which is what we use today on modern vehicles. The 15 is our wheel diameter size. So what size wheel does this tire need to be mounted on? And they can only be mounted on the type of or size of wheel that they are designated for. Okay, so 205/60 R15, tread width, sidewall height, technical term is aspect ratio. Another term we use for that is profile. You might have heard of low profile tires. That would be a tire with a smaller sidewall height. And our R stands for radial, and 15 is a 15-inch wheel, the diameter of the wheel that this tire should be mounted on. Those two extra numbers I mentioned earlier, 91H that you see over here, both of those codes, the 91 is our load index number, and our H is our speed rating. Both of those correspond with a table that you can look up. H happens to be 130 miles per hour. So if you looked up a speed rating table, you'll see that H is 130. So load capacity code and speed rating are those two extra numbers. Something else we see a lot on all-terrain tires, all-season tires, is this M+S. So this tire has some extra tread patterns, some extra grooves and sipes to deal with some wet conditions or muddy conditions. It's just a little bit of a higher level tire than just your standard. Okay, now we know our tire sizes. Let's look at the difference between two different types of tires. So what you have in front of you, these are both tires that come off passenger vehicles, so cars, smaller vehicles, but they are meant for two very different purposes. This tire is for just a standard passenger vehicle that would do daily commuting, highway driving. We've got a decent sidewall here, our aspect ratio. You're going to see that as our aspect ratio goes down, we do get more performance out of the tire. It's a lot more stiff and handles better around turns, but we lose a lot of ride comfort. Okay, this is going to absorb road vibrations and road noise, so this would be a good tire for a daily driving commuting car. Tread patterns will determine is the tire rated for highway only? Does it have a couple different tread patterns on it where it can handle wet conditions and dry conditions, an all-season tire for example, and those will all have different markings as far as the way they need to be mounted on the car. So between these two tires, this is what we call a low profile tire, so we can immediately tell that this tire is meant to be on a vehicle that is geared for performance. Somebody wants good handling, good cornering ability. The stiff sidewall, as you can see, this does not deflect. Very, very stiff. Keeps the car from swaying side to side. Whereas if we look at our standard commuter tire, this sidewall is a lot more flexible. Okay, and that's also going to help with road noise, but we're going to sacrifice some performance. We can tell that by this tire size, if you remember, this one was a 205/60 R15, and this tire right here is a 235. So instead of 205, we have 235, which means our wheel is a lot wider. Okay, if we look at our aspect ratio, we can tell this is obviously a lot smaller. So this was a 60% aspect ratio. This one is a 35%, 235, 35. So this low profile tire, as we call them, is 35% of the tread width. Finally, we can tell that this is obviously meant for a much larger wheel. After the R here, we see R20. So this is a 20-inch wheel that this should go on. A wide diameter, a wide width wheel that's going to help get more traction to the ground. So this is a performance tire. Okay, now what I have in front of you is two heavy-duty truck tires. So these are for our larger vehicles that are going to do more industrial work, possibly tow, weight. They may be leaving the paved road, going on different surfaces that require a more heavy-duty application. So the first thing we notice about these is overall they are much larger diameter tire. We have two different types here as well. So both of these are truck tires, but this one on the right here is a highway tire, and the one on the left here is an all-terrain tire. So all-terrain tires are going to be what we want to use if our vehicle is going off-road from time to time, but we do spend a lot of the time on the highway. So if you have a lifted truck that you go off-roading on the weekends, but the majority of your time is spent commuting to work, this is the tire you are going to want to go with. It has some extra tread. We've got that grippy, knobby tread that we need for off-roading and protecting us from sharp objects, but we also have some stability in here as well. If you go full mud tires, they're a little squirrely and they're squishy, so that is not good when it comes to driving around the city or on the highway. So make sure we're getting the right tire for the application that your truck is actually being used for. If you're commuting in it, we need to get something that does both jobs. This would be a tire meant for maybe a work truck or something that is driving around the city or highways. First thing that we notice with truck tires is the larger aspect ratio. So our sidewalls are much larger, and that's because they're carrying more weight. They're heavier vehicles, they might be towing things. If we look at this tire size on this tire, we've got a 235/85 R16. So 235, this is the same tread width as our high performance car tire. The width of it is the same, but on our high performance car tire, that low profile sidewall was only 35%, and this is 85. So much wider aspect ratio, and we can tell that just from our tire size now that we know what those correspond with. If our bigger number is higher, that's a wider tire. If the middle percentage number is smaller, that's a more low profile tire in the sidewall. Finally, the wheel that it's supposed to be mounted on is a 16-inch wheel. Okay, so this all-terrain truck tire right here, this is a 285/75/16. So very wide tread width. Our last one we looked at was 235. 285 on this dimension down here. Our 75 sidewall or aspect ratio. Okay, so our sidewall height is very big for our off-road truck tires. And then we have our radial tire type, and it's supposed to be mounted on a 16-inch wheel as well. And that's our all-terrain tire. Okay, let's talk about a little bit about visual inspections of tires and some of the things we can run into. Along with measuring tread depth, checking the pressures, we want to check the tread for abnormal wear. Different things can happen to vehicles, different problems that cause tires to wear unevenly, and we want to catch that. That is the main reason that we are rotating our tires as preventive maintenance measures. We want to take those tires and move them around the vehicle so we wear them out in different places and they wear more evenly and last longer. So, but if we do run into components that fail and cause abnormal wear quickly, we need to correct that problem before we just replace the tire. So right here we've got a perfect example of what looks like a very, very bad alignment issue. We've got extreme wear on the inside edge only of this tire. So much so that you can see the steel cables are coming out. And be careful when you're working around tires, because you can see this tore my glove already. These will catch you and cut you. So heavy duty gloves are a good idea when working around tires. But you might not see this at first glance from the outside of the vehicle either. So we want to make sure we're checking the inside tread and the outside tread. If you measure this with a tread depth gauge, it's going to be very different than here. And we can see that this tire has some conicity. It's wearing on the inside more than it is the outside, or vice versa. Okay. Depending on what you see here, if we see two outside edges that are worn heavy, that's usually an underinflation issue. Okay, so the tire's kind of buckled in the middle, and these outside edges are getting worn heavy. So if you don't keep your tires at the proper pressure, that's what you're going to end up wearing into your tread. The opposite, if you put too much air pressure in your tires, inflate them over the pressure they should be at. It says 35 psi on the door, but you're like, nah, more air is better. I'm going to take that thing up to 44. Put it at the max. That will cause the tire to kind of bulge out, and we're going to wear a stripe out in the middle of the tire. So when we look at how the tread is wearing, we can kind of see what problems might be on the vehicle, or things that we need to maintain better. Another thing that you might catch is what we call scalping a tire, or it's bald, patchy spots kind of all over the tire, and that can be an out of balance wheel. Maybe your shock absorbers or your struts are worn out, so that tire is not maintaining contact with the road. Different wear patterns can be an indicator of different things, I should say. Let's look. I think I have another couple ones, but this is a very great example of an extreme edge wear. That would be a wheel alignment issue, or a strut, or something like that needs to be replaced. If you look at this tire, I think this is another wheel alignment problem. This was a big truck that had bad ball joints. So heavy inside wear. As we can see, the tire is almost brand new out here. 10-30 seconds tread depth down this channel, and we're under the minimum over here. So heavy conicity. The tire is shaped down this way. If this is in the front position, one of your front two tires, having uneven wear like this can cause the vehicle to pull your steering wheel left or right. So this is something that we want to catch. And if you pull your old tires off and they look like this, we need to fix this problem first before we just throw the new tires on there, or we're going to turn our new tires into this exact wear pattern as well. Here's a couple examples of just some different tread patterns and the markings that those correspond with. A lot of standard tires, OEM tires, just for your everyday commuting and highway driving, those are going to be non-directional tread patterns, meaning the tread is symmetrical. It doesn't matter which way we mount the tire on the wheel, the tread is the same both directions. This example right here is a symmetrical tire. So you can see the tread pattern is the same this way as if I were to put the tire on the vehicle this way. Okay, these tires have no markings on them. They can be installed on the wheel facing any direction. Doesn't matter if this side wall is facing out or the other side wall is facing out. It's what we call a non-directional tread pattern. and it is the most common. Symmetrical tires such as this can be rotated to both sides of the car using the modified X pattern, because the tire can rotate any direction. Okay, next we have what's called the asymmetrical tread pattern, and that obviously means that it's not the same. The inside edge is different than the outside edge. So if you look closely at this tire, the tread pattern on this side is different than the tread pattern on this side. So this is an asymmetrical tire. And the markings that we will see on an asymmetrical tire are inside and outside marks. Because one side is supposed to face the outside part of the wheel, and one sidewall is supposed to face the inside. So over here you can see our inside mark. So this sidewall would need to be facing down on the inside of the tire. And that's to make sure the correct tread pattern is on the right side of the wheel. Most of the time these are all-season tires. So one side is meant to help with some moisture and keep traction in wet conditions, and then usually the outside has some more flat surface area that gives us better traction in dry pavement and handling conditions. So the tread differs from inside to outside. So asymmetrical tires, inside and outside sidewall marks. Asymmetrical tires, where we have different tread on the inside than the outside, can be rotated to both sides of the vehicle. So when we take this tire from the passenger side of the car and mount it on the driver's side, the outside edge is still facing the outside. So we can rotate these tires using the modified X method as well. Now this is an example of not only a heavily worn tire with abnormal tire wear, but this is what we call a directional tread type. And that means that it has to rotate in a certain direction. This V pattern that we see is a big clue that we're dealing with a directional tire. These are high performance tires. Because the tire is designed to roll a certain way, they roll more efficiently. They take less energy to spin, so you can actually increase your acceleration with directional tires because they rotate a certain direction. What's important about these though is they have a rotation mark on the sidewall, and sometimes it's hard to find. If I look over here, there I can see our rotation mark. It's telling me that it needs to rotate this way. So when we're putting these tires on wheels, we need to know, is that wheel going on the driver's side of the car or the passenger side, so that we can make sure it's rotating the correct direction. If we have directional tires, we cannot rotate these tires to other sides of the car. These tires have to stay on the same side that they're mounted for. If you take a rotational or directional tire from the driver's side and move it to the passenger side, it is now spinning backwards. Okay, so when we rotate directional tread patterns, if you find rotation marks on the sidewall, then you need to keep those tires on the same side of the car. Front passenger will be rotated with the rear passenger side tire. Front driver's side tire will be rotated with the rear driver's side tire.